Hello, and welcome to the Earthly Roots podcast,
where we chat all things gardening, homesteading, and connecting to nature.
We're your hosts, Diane and Robyn.
The Earthly Roots podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Okay, hello, welcome. Welcome back to another episode. Before we start today's episode, we just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone out there who has been watching and listening to the podcast. It's been really, really great to hear all of your feedback.
So heartwarming. It's been so nice getting people contacting us, letting us know that they're listening to us while they're out in the garden or cleaning the house, doing chores. I know that's something we just dreamt of when we first made this little podcast.
Little idea. Yeah, it's cool to see people sharing it on Instagram, like where they're watching it. It's really interesting, and just connecting with and building a bit more of a community and seeing more, Australian people kind of talk about their gardens, and people overseas as well. But I feel like it's great to just build a local community and just get some feedback, which is really great. So thank you so much for everyone who has been watching and listening. We really appreciate it.
And sending their love and support. It's been so lovely to take something that used to be an idea and really turn it into this big community that just keeps growing and growing. Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
So today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is flowers. I'm very excited today to talk all things flowers. It's going to just be a conversation about a little bit of flower farming sprinkled into there, because that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment.
Can't help yourself.
I know.
It's something you're proud of.
Yep.
Yeah, you should be.
Exactly. But I feel like we all, as gardeners, or most gardeners, do plant a few flowers in the garden, and for some plant a lot, others just plant a few, but I feel like it's common ground that we do have flowers in the garden. It's something we like to enjoy. They're beautiful. They have so much benefit, and
it's going to be a great conversation. And I think something that a lot of people don't realize has a lot of benefit in so many ways more than just beauty or color in your garden. Like flowers can really benefit your health. They can benefit pollinators and creatures around in your garden like birds. They can also be really beneficial for, like purifying your home and making it smell really nice depending on the flowers you pick. And so many other things that flowers can contribute not only outside but also inside the home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So are you growing any flowers at the moment in your garden?
I definitely am, and I'm actually really, this is such a cool conversation to have with you because I feel like you're the one person that inspired me to grow flowers in my garden.
Aww.
2 years ago when I first started gardening, you would always hear me say, I will never plant flowers. What's the point if I can't eat them? Which, is so
Times
hilarious.
Have changed.
They really have. While now, every time I plant a vegetable in my garden, I plant a flower seed or a few flower seeds, and it's just exponentially grown from there. There's so many flowers in my garden now, and it excites me to see new varieties popping up or some that have self-seeded like borage, which is going insane in our front yard. So right now in my garden, I have a few flowers that have kind of been perennials and have stayed there for a while, like my nasturtium flowers, a lot of the native flowers from around. But I'm also discovering new ones, like a lot of my succulents are starting to go to flower at the moment, and they're stunning.
Yeah, it's cool to see the cycle of a succulent because usually you just kind of think of it as the leaves, but some of their flowers are really amazing and
so colourful.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, awesome. I've seen some of your bulbs that have popped up as well.
Yes.
They're so pretty.
Yes,
so
which speaking of bulbs, I will mention mine for a moment, but then we should talk about Floriade because just last week, Robyn and I went to the Floriade Festival, which for those that don't know is a tulip expo in Canberra that happens every year, and it's massive. I think we took guesses at just how many bulbs were at Floriade, which, by the way, I was very close.
Yes, you did. Out of all of us three, you got the closest.
Yeah, and it was 1,300,000 or somewhere around there, which is insane to think of that many flowers in a fairly small space. I mean, it was large, but it wasn't like I'm hiking through a massive field and feeling exhausted by the end. So we'll come back to that in a moment, but I did recently, so in autumn time or winter time, I planted some bulbs into my garden for the first time, and I bought them as like a clearance sale, like a box of just random bulbs, and it was just what they had left. And I was like, cool, I've never done this before. I have no idea what colors they are, what varieties they are, but we'll just give it a go. And so I planted them into this beautiful little spot at the front of the garden. And now that they're coming up, I'm realizing just how much I have fallen in love with flowers and color.
That's so good. Yeah, they're so pretty. I think sometimes the surprise of flowers is what gets people hooked, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't know what they will really look like. Like you can get a sense of what it might look like from a picture or what other people have posted, but it can react really differently in your garden. Like, have you ever had flowers where you expected one thing and then maybe got something completely different, or a pleasant surprise?
Yeah, well, I mean, like you, I did like a mix of bulbs, and that was so fun to figure out what colours were in the mix. So all of my ranunculus, which are sadly dying now, but they have been so pretty, and I've picked so many of them, and it was just like a rainbow of colour, and it was just amazing.
That sounds stunning. Didn't you take them to a nursing home and do like a little workshop?
Yeah, I did.
Tell me more about that. I haven't heard about that yet.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's one reason why I started the flower farm, because my Uma loves flowers, and this is her home that we're living in, we're renting, and she used to grow a lot of flowers in the backyard, and nothing gives her more joy than seeing flowers. So
it's so beautiful.
Yeah, so there's something that I've wanted to do for a while, and also because she has dementia. So she's kind of in the later stages of dementia, which is a terrible thing, and is something that I'm really passionate about, kind of sharing what it is, and which is just different for everyone, but it's often trauma based. So when you can have something that focuses someone who has dementia, it's really amazing to see them go back in time a little bit, and they start to remember what their life was like, and all of the colours just bring that happiness, which is really nice.
I think it's even more special coming from her granddaughter. Like, that's a really powerful thing that you are doing for your Oma.
Yeah, she really loves it. So I brought in a bucket for them all, and we just put the flowers in water, sat in a little table and did that. And it was just amazing to see all of these patients in the nursing home who I had never spoken to, or they'd never really said words to me before, because that's just what the nature of their dementia is. And then to see them all light up and tell me stories about their childhood and things like that.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing how much memory these flowers were bringing back to them. And I don't know, it was something that I'm interested to learn a little bit more research-wise, like what it actually does, what these natural colours can do for our memories and bring you back to childhood, because smell and, colours is such a engaging thing to look at and to remember. Yeah. And I feel like everyone has a good memory about flowers.
Yeah, I definitely do. Yeah. There's certain scents like that when I smell them again, or I see a certain flower like a lilac, it instantly reminds me of my mum, because she would have that particular flower and no other flower in her house every time. And so that's so special that you're able to reconnect people with memories that they've lost completely almost, or which they have forgotten about, and they can relive it almost like they are there in that moment again. Yeah. That's so special.
Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So Floriade.
Floriade was amazing. It was so great to see all of that colour. It was a bit of a rainy day, but still, the colour was there to brighten the mood.
I agree.
A little bit.
Yeah. So what was your favourite combination of flowers at Floriade, and how is it different from what you replicate or do in your own garden?
so different to the garden here, mainly because tulips actually, I find them really hard to grow here. Okay. I think because we are right on the coast, and also our soils are really, they have a high clay content. Mm-hmm. The tulips just failed.
They just didn't. No, they weren't happy. You said they were short, didn't you?
They were really short, yeah. And
okay, that's a shame.
I think that's due to them not getting that chill factor that they need. And I know you can put bulbs in the fridge or the freezer to get that chill factor, but it doesn't compare to an area that naturally gets, say, frosts or cooler temperatures. Like I feel like you may have a little bit more colder temperatures where you're living. Perhaps. Up on the hill. Yeah. It's really mild here. Like we hardly ever get frosts. And if they are, they're not in the areas where the tulips were planted. So maybe I can plant them there differently next year. But
do you think it could have had something to do with where you source them from as well, though? Because you said something about they had to have that chill factor, and if they weren't stored that way but by the company you bought them from, could that potentially have an impact once you put them into your ground? I mean, of course, your soil will have a huge impact too, but...
Well, I hope not, because they were really expensive.
Oh, really?
No, I think they were already pre-chilled and stored in the correct conditions. Yeah. Well, that's what the brochure said. But I think...
You should do an experiment, find out from a different company as well and see what happens.
Yeah. No, I think it's just the climate here. It's not cold enough. But we can grow other bulbs, like... the anemones did really well, and the ranunculus, daffodils.
They did really well. Yeah. I didn't even realise how many ranunculus you had planted until they all started flowering.
Yeah, it was like over 100.
And they're going to multiply now, you said, so...
Hopefully, Ooh. Yeah.
So knowing that your ranunculus are going to multiply, do you have a new spot that you're going to plant them in, or are you just going to let it become fuller?
Yeah, so I think next year... when I plant them in autumn again, which is when I planted these ones here, I think I want to move them to more of a big row so that I can use it and apply it more with the flower farm. So cool. Currently they were just in my kind of kitchen style cottage garden, which I have a lot of herbs and veggies that I grow, but I would like to move to more a flower farm row style, so that I can just kind of know how many I'm planting and have it a little bit more drawn out and planned. Yeah. Because it's going to be really beneficial when I'm harvesting to not have to reach over to pick them. I can just pick them in a nice neat row and it can be a lot more productive. Yeah.
So does that streamline the process of them being able to harvest them and use them?
Definitely, yeah. So for where they were now, the row was just too wide. So I was finding I was missing the ones towards the middle. And then with all of this rain that we've had, I had to be really on top of picking them when they were ready, which is something that I'm learning about flowers, is that there's so many different times not to pick flowers if you want to cut flowers. Yeah.
Can you expose us to some of that knowledge? Because I will just cut them whenever I want them.
Yeah, so. Which is fine to do. If you're just, making a little posy or you're just enjoying it at home. But if I want to sell them and have them last for a long time, it's called conditioning. So you need to condition the flower in a certain way so that it'll last longer in water.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's so many different ways that you can do this, and I'm still learning. I've learned a lot from YouTube and books, but I have been cutting them more so in the morning, so really early in the morning, and that's when the plant is also just the least stressed, so it's fully hydrated from the night as well. Yeah, and then towards the morning and the later morning and into noon, the plant gets more and more stressed as it goes on. So it'll lose moisture. It will fully open the petals as well, be more open to pollination. And with flowers that I would like to pick for cut flowers, I want the flowers actually not to be very pollinated. If it is pollinated, then it's going to last a lot less time in the vase.
Oh, interesting. Is that because it's transforming into its next phase?
Pretty much, yeah. Wow. So it's fully opening. You can also have then pollen fallout, which doesn't look as nice. And these are some things that I never really knew about. I don't really care for myself what it looks like, but
But that's because you love flowers.
Yeah, I need it to travel well. So yeah, I've been cutting in the morning, making sure I have really sharp snips, and then putting it straight into water. And often I will put it in that morning and then use it the next day. So I'll let it have that kind of 24 hours to fully hydrate in water, in clean buckets, and then I'll play with it the next day. So it'll have some time outside of its natural habitat, I suppose. It's not in the ground anymore. So the plant needs to figure out how to take that water up and any nutrients that might be in the water or the air, and then, be fully hydrated again, because a lot of them will just flop right over.
I was going to say that would probably be a really great way to experiment and find out what flowers will work really well in a bouquet or in flower arrangements, and what flowers just won't survive even that first 24 hours. Have you found that you've been able to, do you base a lot of the flowers that you grow and the knowledge that you have off what you've seen? Or have you been also taking the time to just experiment with putting more random varieties or more native varieties that you may not have heard about in maybe American flower farmer gardens?
Yeah, well, with a lot of the natives, I've just been experimenting. Yeah. So picking them at different times of the day. So while you can pick early in the morning, you can also pick later in the evening or later at night. More so in the cooler times of the year. Summer, sometimes it's just too hot in the afternoon anyway, and I'd probably do it in the morning. But yeah, things like all of the native bottle brush leaves, I use a lot of those in
they're stunning
arrangements. Yeah,
and there's so many varieties. I was talking to Scott about that earlier when we were setting up the podcast, because I went and I tried to propagate a lot of my native plants, and the bottle brush was one of them. But every time that I went to a new bottle brush plant, I noticed the leaves were just so different, or the little nuts on them would be just slightly bigger or smaller, and the flower petals as well.
Yeah, and other than bottle brush, there's grevilleas. I love grevillea leaves, banksia leaves, native fern as well. So these are all the foliage type, that I've been experimenting with. And I have a lot of native flower plants that flower, whatever you want to call it, planted in the ground. They're just really young at the moment, so they haven't reached that stage when they are flowering, but I love to use thryptomene, any kind of leptospermum, or smaller leaves and smaller flowers look really great in arrangements.
We'll have to put up, I think, on the YouTube channel, as we're talking about these different varieties of flowers, as you mentioned names, I would love to have maybe pictures of what the varieties look like, because that's something I know as a beginning flower delverintura.
Love that.
We'll just come up with all these random names for us. But as I'm starting to learn more about flowers and be exposed to more varieties, it really helps me to be able to see them visually before they go into the ground or into the garden. So I think that will really help, hopefully, our audience and our listeners as well, for those that are checking out our YouTube channel.
Yep. And we'll try and post a little bit more on Instagram about the what we're talking about, and some more informative things over there as well. But yeah, there is so many to choose from. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of different flowers out there. Yeah. And I love to incorporate both natives and annuals and non-natives into the garden to use in the flower farm.
Yeah.
But yeah, natives, we are so lucky in Australia to have so many beautiful flowers.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned before that you've got your grevilleas and bottle brush, was it around?
Yes, so we've got so many bottle brush trees around. I actually discovered that where we record the podcast at my place, we are actually sitting underneath a white bottle brush tree.
Nice.
For so long, I thought it was one of the tea tree plants that had just grown crazy.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of hating on it for a while. And then this season,
you do have a lot of tea tree around.
We do. We've got a very swampy area at the bottom of our property that it just propagates itself like crazy, because tea tree not only spreads seeds, but it also has roots under the ground that almost like a raspberry plant that just keeps sending up shoots.
Yeah.
But yes, that tree that we sit underneath has white bottle brush flowers, and they're just stunning. I have a new love and appreciation for that beautiful little tree.
That's good.
But yeah, the grevillea is doing really well as well. It has this beautiful striking pink and red color throughout the property. And I'm also noticing some other wildflowers that are popping up around the place as well, which is things like poppies that are wild sown around the area.
Yeah.
We've got wildflowers, which are probably not a great thing. So I've been pulling those out.
Yeah.
I think they're more bad for the farmers rather than
there are a lot of
much.
invasive flowers around, which, are nice to see, and they do benefit pollinators to an extent, I suppose.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of invasive flowers around.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
really
something
touch and
to
go,
keep in mind.
with flowers sometimes.
Yeah.
With weed flowers anyways, because there is so much beauty, and like it's so whimsical to go out in your garden and walk amongst the grass or the clover and see the little wildflowers, whether they are from the clover or that they're other different types of weeds. But yeah, unless you know a bit more about flowers and which ones are invasive and which ones aren't, it's really hard to tell what to keep and what not to.
Yeah, and that's something that I like. Some flowers and plants around here that aren't invasive where I used to live, they're invasive here. So I've been I've been really checking every time I plant a plant whether it is invasive, because I had no idea that some plants like the butterfly bush, I know that's a really popular flower around, is a little bit more invasive around this area.
Okay.
And same with a lot of other species. So I've been really mindful lately to just check online
what it
because it's a lot of nurseries will actually be selling weeds and flowers that aren't actually beneficial to your area. So I'd always recommend just doing your own research and looking up maybe native alternatives, if it even is classed as like slightly weedy or not, because it can be really detrimental to the ecosystem. And I know we have weeds in our garden that are really established, and it's quite hard to get rid of them now.
Really?
Which is
like
a bit
the thistle weed.
Yeah.
Have you seen those? They have those beautiful striking pink flowers, but they're so spiky.
Yeah. No, we have horrible like oleanders around, and
I love the names of flowers. They just sound so wonderful.
Dude, there's a lot of cool flower names.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool just to be keeping that in mind. Because a lot of flowers are really beneficial to pollinators, and it's something that I really like to talk about.
Yes.
We could maybe talk a little bit about pollination and what it is, and keep on talking about the flower farm as well eventually.
Yeah. Well, one thing, like after I started really getting into flowers, the next thing that really drove that home was bees.
Yeah.
We had this hakea tree. I'm only just learning how to say the word properly because we've been calling it hakea for so long.
That sounds cool though.
I think so too. But anyways, the hakea tree gets a lot of beautiful white flowers over the winter time, and closer into springtime, and that's when the bees love that tree. And so you hear all this buzzing happening in the tree, and it sounds so beautiful. And a lot of people have fear of bees, and I think it's just they have a misunderstanding of what their purpose is. And you know how when you hear a fly, you have this urge to just shoo it away.
Yeah.
But when you do that to a bee, you often hear stories of people getting stung and getting bothered by bees. But a lot of the time, like if you're hitting something away from you, of course it's going to get a little bit cranky.
I would.
Yeah, me too.
I did actually used to be really scared of bees.
Really?
I have been stung before, so I know I'm not allergic, thankfully. Yeah. But now I've kind of shifted my thinking around it. And now I walk around them thinking like, look, guys, I'm providing you with all this food, so you have to love me.
I know.
Be friends with them.
And I heard this thing once of like, if a bee lands on you, like don't have any fear. That bee just thinks you're as pretty as a flower. Exactly. I mean, they've mistaken you for a flower. That's the only reason they've landed on you. That's all they're looking for.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that hakea tree was buzzing with bees, but what was different about it from any other time is that it was buzzing with bees, and we soon found out that the reason it was because there was a swarm of bees up above us, and it was like this cloud of black bees, and the noise was deafening. It was so incredible. I actually captured it on video.
Yeah, cool.
And it was back when we had our pigs, but they eventually landed like around the queen on one of the branches of the hakea tree, and that was the moment that Sam and I were like, okay, do we get them? Like, do we want to have bees? And just from like this slow obsession with flowers and color and the sound of the bees and just that beauty of sitting out in the garden and having like a little bee just fly by you or land on a flower and you see them like dance around in that pollen and get their whole little bodies covered up.
So cute.
And yeah, so the obsession with bees started there. We didn't end up catching that swarm, unfortunately, but about a week later or a few days later, after we got all of the things and we were ready to go, another swarm had become available. And so now we have bees, which is great. I love them.
Yeah.
But now anytime I'm in my garden around the flowers, whether they're vegetable flowers or they're just ornamental flowers that I've planted into my garden, and I see the little bees on them, I look down and I'm like, that's my bee.
Yeah.
You know, like that bee's giving me honey. That bee is helping my vegetables to grow. And bees aren't the only pollinators out in the garden. You probably experience a lot more variety in pollinators out in the garden. So what others have you seen kind of getting attracted to different flowers, or have you noticed any flowers that the bees especially love?
Yeah, well, I have seen a lot of pollinators, different pollinators around. The main ones generally are honeybees around here, but I've noticed lately there's been a lot of, they're called hoverflies.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Which are a native bee, aren't they?
Yeah. And they're really cool and not scared of those, so that's all good. But also little native bees, and I can't remember what they're called, but they're the native stingless bees.
Yeah.
That might be what they're called. But
which a lot of people mistake them for flies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've actually been coming into the house a lot. I don't know.
Are they the
why.
ones that fly in squares? Those are so irritating, I must say.
Weird. Yeah. I mean, they're really cute, but they just seem to, I think they just like coming inside because it's dry at the moment in here.
Perhaps.
Yeah, so a lot of those, and I have been finding the different size of the pollinator, wasps as well. I've seen some of them around. They're also really important for pollinating.
Which they're a bit scary. Like, I love bees, and I'm not obsessed with flies, but I understand that the ones that fly, that they're native, but wasps are a whole other kettle of fish. And I wonder if it's again back to that misunderstanding of what that bug really does want in life, but just stories.
Yeah, I've been stung by 3 wasps at once.
Wow.
And it's, now that I think back at it, like I was being really loud and stomping around and whatever, and it would have just scared them. And it's all just remembering how to respect an animal in the way that it wants to be respected, and you should be fine. But there's been lots of activity in the garden, which is cool. And I have been noticing that different pollinators prefer different flowers. So ones that are really popular right now, the ranunculus, there's so many bees around them. The pollen on that is crazy. But the ones that have probably brought in the most pollinator activity have been the brassicas that have gone to seed.
Okay, wow, yeah.
Yeah, so all the radish that went to seed, the broccoli, cabbage, any of those, they have quite small flowers, but they're just packed with pollen.
Yeah.
So I've been noticing a lot of smaller pollinators preferring those.
Which is really incredible, because those types of plants used to be your vegetables, which maybe you just had an abundance of or are at the end of their harvest. So just the fact that you left them to go to flower for the bees is incredible, and that didn't take you any extra effort or seeds or money. You literally took something that would have been a waste product. I mean, you know, you can put it in the compost pile, but at the end of a vegetable's life, you would normally cut down that plant and then that's it. But just that simple element of leaving it in the garden to go to that next stage is so impactful for the bees, because they do prefer those little flowers, don't they?
Yeah. And that's why so while bottlebrush and what's the other one, grevilleas, those bigger pollen filled, nectar filled flowers are really important. Other natives are also really important. So we kind of refer to those a lot, and recommend to plant those if we want more pollinator activity and bird activity. But there are so many other smaller little flowers that might not put on as much of a show as these, that are really important to maintain diversity and support smaller pollinators and smaller birds as well, because they also play a really big part in pollination.
Yeah. And you want to encourage those pollinators into your garden. If you want a healthy, thriving garden, if you want low bug pressure, I mean, you want to be inviting others into the garden, even if it might mean every now and again you get some birds that might eat more of your fruit or veggies than you had hoped. But a lot of the time they are there to add a lot of benefit into your garden as well. Yeah. And I'm not sure what I was listening to. It must have been another podcast, but they were talking about having flowers like amaranth and other similar flowers planted in your garden which attract birds because they've got grain for them. But that being almost like a disguise or a detour for the birds, so that instead of going for your other fruits and veggies, they're going to the flowers in your garden and like the grain seeds, as opposed to going and, let's say, eating your broccoli or tomatoes or whatever else. So I'm really looking forward to incorporating more of those into the garden. And I mean, even right now, I have flowers at the back of my garden. I have like a whole big section dedicated to that. And then I've got little places here and there for flowers as well. But I'm really curious to see, because this is going to be the first year that the whole back section of the garden will be in flowers. Yeah. Whether that has an impact on all the tomatoes that I've planted as well, and if the birds and all the other creatures are naturally drawn over there rather than the veggies. So
because a lot of vegetables depend on pollination. I actually have some facts here that I wanted to share, because pollination is something that I'm really interested in, because it's going downhill right now. And I think that as gardeners, we can really improve the situation by encouraging pollinators in our garden. It's a service, or an ecosystem service, that is so important to our health and our livelihood in terms of food production. But apparently, and a lot of people might know this already, but...
Well, I don't, so tell me.
Okay, well, 3 out of 4 crops, they depend on pollination. Wow. But only 1/3 of crop production depends on that. So that means that 3 out of 4 kind of all of the plants that we might consume need pollination. But a lot of them don't, like grains and some legumes, corn, and things like that. Yeah. Yeah. But still, 1/3 is quite a lot.
It is a lot. I mean, that's all your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your broccoli. I mean, all of the things that you love and probably have the most of in your diet needs to be pollinated. It's just, it sounds like your grains that don't, which only makes up a portion of your diet.
Yeah, and things like melons, if you want to grow melons or pumpkins or zucchini, they all really depend on having that pollination activity, which you can do by yourself. Like, you can pollinate flowers.
That's hard work, depending on how big your garden is.
It's kind of fun though. Getting all busy in there, but
you're being a little bee dressed up like a little bee out there. I can imagine it. I love seeing during squash season, or like the pumpkin growing season, seeing just how many bees fit into those giant flowers, because you see one of them jump in there and you go, oh cool, I just want to check out what it's getting up to, and then all of these bees are just having a party in there.
I love their little pollen sacs, like they fill up on the sides of them. And it's like, you could be able to fly away with all that there. You've got a lot, but...
It's even worse seeing them land in the hive afterwards, because they're all just crashing into the hive after like this long flight. Some of them don't make it onto the little entrance. They fall to the ground and then shake themselves off and come back up. It's I love seeing all the variety in color that comes out from the pollen. Like, so there's pretty. The oranges, the yellow. It looks like they've got little Cheetos on their feet. So cute. But did you know that you can actually get pollen in colours like blue and black as well?
I didn't know that. Although I have seen some black, but boy,
so the blue comes from wildflowers. So not wildflowers, sorry. What I just said it before. They're an invasive weed for the farmers.
Thistles? Or?
No, not the thistles.
Poppies? Or? No,
they're the little yellow flowers that pop up in the fields, and you got to pull them out when... fireweed.
Yeah.
So fireweed is one of the plants that when the bee gets the pollen from them, it turns blue in the hive. So I've never actually seen a bee come out with like blue sacs on their legs, but I have seen it in the honeycomb.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was incredible. The first time I was like, oh, is this a disease? Like, is something wrong with my bees? And then I found that out.
Interesting.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. What other facts do you have?
Well, that was kind of it, but no.
Oh, okay. No,
well, just more so the fact that if that should be, well, it is some incentive to plant flowers in the garden, because in the research world, we can't actually really keep up with what is actually happening to pollinators in terms of research. It's really hard to keep up with research because land is being cleared so quickly. So clearing even just, a large area of land, there could be really important pollinators in there for the entire area.
Yeah.
And we might not know those effects of clearing that land for like 50 years or so, depending on if we actually do research on it or not. But there are certain areas in the world where pollinators are declining more so, particularly where there's broad-scale agriculture and monoculture, because they just don't have that diversity, or there's one pollinator which then overtakes all of the other ones.
Yeah, which honeybees can actually be, I mean, they are an invasive, well, they're not invasive, but I mean, they are not a natural species to the area. And a lot of the time, honeybees take the place of native bees. In tree hollows, if a honeybee colony goes and colonizes that, then they've taken that away from a potential native species. And I think that's where us as beekeepers are benefiting in a way, because we're containing them. As long as we're being responsible, we're able to keep them in this home that is as unnatural as they are to our environment. And by preventing swarms from happening and being responsible and taking care of your bees, looking after their health, you're able to keep those honeybees, which are still very important to all of these introduced crops that we have, like our tomatoes and our cucumbers, which aren't native either. And we need those honeybees for that. But it's important, as you said, to also be aware that there are so many other pollinators, bee species out there that are native and still need a variety of flowers and plants that we can support them with. One really good idea for this that I've heard recently, all of these things that I've heard recently, it's just perfect.
Perfect for the podcast.
I know. But one thing that I heard and something that I'm trialing out in my garden is leaving a patch of wildflowers and weeds to just go to their full maturity. And so I've been sectioning off, mostly it's been clover, but there's other things that I'm not quite sure the names of, like mixed into that. And especially finding the spots where your bees are attracted, like all of the hoverflies and the blue bees and all the other ones that you're seeing, and just let them have that chance to have those flowers, especially in winter and springtime when the other flowers around aren't growing yet, or the rains are coming down and the pollen isn't as likely to stay on the petals or the flowers. Or where does the pollen stay? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
We're not biologists here.
No, we're not. I'm not a scientist and I'm far from it, but that's okay. But yeah, just having like a little wildflower patch in your garden, and you can really make this a beautiful feature, like maybe put some logs around it, or even like not a cage, but like put up like some almost like a gazebo type of look to it. Like make it a beautiful feature in your garden. If you have a spot that's especially crowded by pollinators and bees, like make that the spot. And just, the more pollinators you have in your garden, the more excitement you'll get for going outside in that space too.
Yeah. That's a really good idea. Yeah, and I think with the flower farm, although a lot of the flowers that I want to harvest or pick, I will pick them pre-pollination, hopefully. Yeah. But a lot of them I will leave to go because I would also like to collect seeds, and that's important for me as well. Yeah. So,
and that's it. Having that variety is important. Yeah, exactly. Going back to Floriyard before as well, we mentioned a little bit about how there were a lot of tulips, but there were a lot of other varieties of plants planted within that as well. And I found out that those little flowers that we saw planted throughout were everlasting daisies. So they picked everlasting daisies, which I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's some that are native to Australia, but a lot are native to Africa.
Yeah, there's a few native here, but I think different types. Yeah, there's a very similar climate over there.
So which is really cool. So it goes back to the point that you can integrate flowers together that have similar colors or contrasting colors, and I'd really like to talk about color next and that variety and how you can bring out certain colors together in a garden. But it was really impactful seeing those different colors and different varieties of flowers working together, the different heights of them as well, but then coming back and thinking about that importance that even they showed of not only feeding the honeybees, but being able to feed all of the native pollinators as well and just encourage life into that space. Yeah. So as far as colors and textures, what kinds of tips or experiences do you have with color and texture in flower gardens?
Not a lot of experience, more so
I doubt that.
Well, I haven't looked into it a lot, but there are lots of color wheels that you can look at if you're unsure what color might go with another one. Color wheels are a great way to start, and also just playing around. Like, one of my favorite combinations is just choosing pastel colors. Like, they're really safe to go with.
Yeah, that's
love
beautiful.
Pastel. Yeah, so lots of pastel pinks and purples, which you can find a lot of different varieties of them. Go really great with a pastel green.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite combination. I'm looking at it now because we have a little flower arrangement here that I just put together. But purple and yellow go really great together.
Well, those are contrasting colors. Yeah. Same with red and green, orange and blue, purple and yellow. I think they're the main ones.
Yeah.
And then you can have other things like once you go into like the color wheel for sure. I think a really fun activity for anyone who's feeling a bit artistic or just wanting to find out a little bit more about color theory is to get some paints out and look up a color wheel, and actually mix those colors together and figure out which ones draw your eye.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good place to start when planning out a garden. But I think you can also have a lot of just experimentation and come across combinations that you didn't realize worked.
Yeah, because it's all personal preference as well. Like, I mean, I personally don't really love orange and
the contrasting
red flowers. Like, I just don't really love the color of them. I don't know why, but I think I just prefer the pastels, like purples and lighter colors. But some people absolutely love red and orange. Yeah. So it's not like I'm not going to be growing those, but personally I have a very different taste in what I like in a bouquet. See,
orange flowers, I'm a bit like you. I've always had this thing where I just don't like orange things. I don't like orange lollies. I don't like the color orange. I don't like orange clothes.
Do you like oranges?
No.
Oh, okay.
They're okay. I don't like mandarins though.
Oh, okay.
But that's way off topic. But what I do like in my garden, even though I don't like orange flowers, sometimes when I get like a mix of different flower colors, I will naturally get orange colors. Like calendula flowers come in orange.
Yes.
Marigolds very often come in orange. And so I found that something that I've really enjoyed doing in my garden is dedicating a space for those orange flowers and then finding ways to really enhance them. So where I have a lot of purple flowers planted in my garden, having those little orange flowers popping up is actually really pleasant.
Yeah.
But alongside just the color, having the different heights and textures. So like you have like the marigold bushes compared to like your salvias, which are really like tall and purple, and seeing those together.
Yeah.
Is so striking.
Yeah, I think that's something I've learned in the cottage garden is having clumps of flowers. And although I might not like the plant as an individual or not like I love all plants, but I have favorites.
Of course, and we all do.
Yeah.
Favorite children, favorite plants.
Exactly. But yeah, I've noticed having clumps of them, but having those clumps spread out and having minimal I have a lot of diversity, but not going crazy on diversity. Like always having a few plants of the same type in a garden, it really can bring it all together and shape it all together, because then your eye, if you're thinking about orange or you're looking at an orange thing, it'll immediately go to all the other orange things in the garden.
Yeah.
So if it's spread it out in a way, if it's, spread out in a way that you like or is a little bit more kind of you can do formal or more wild, your eyes will naturally be drawn to them. And so many people always ask about, like, how do you design a garden? And that's something we could do a whole episode on.
I would love that. I'd be so curious.
I'm like not an expert, but I love,
but you have personal experience, and that's important.
But I've only just learned this though, that using those clumps and not quite having, a design on paper, but just using your eye to naturally see where it's drawn in the garden.
Cool.
And then you might find a little spot that your eye's not going to, and then just adding another plant of what you've already got in there will just make the garden seem a lot older than it is, and a lot more brought together and whimsical and whatever you want to go for. But I'm going
to take that and use that. I'm just going to go stand in my on my homestead with all of the grass everywhere.
Find some space.
All the things that I can add.
Yeah, but colour is amazing. And I mean, having kind of also colour with, flowers, but also foliage, because some flower plants have great foliage.
Oh, the purple leaves or the silver leaves that some foliage has is stunning.
Yeah, and having something, and I learned this from Garden Answer, who's one of my favourite YouTubers, Laura, but having something that's blue, something that's red, and something that's a little bit more yellow will automatically bring a garden together.
The primary
as well.
colours.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So having bluish, whether it's like cornflowers are a great blue flower, because I always struggle with what flower is blue, but there are a lot of more bluey purple flowers, and I love cornflowers for that.
Yeah.
And then having some red, even though I don't love red, but having more burgundy red.
Yeah.
I love that.
But you can have red, like red roses. You can have red bottle brush.
Yeah. So having all those colours together can really bring a garden together. And, I have veggies interspersed with that. And I just think flowers are just so versatile that you can always chuck a few here and there in your rows, or to break up a row or something like that.
Yeah, I do really love them too. So I wonder, with your ranunculus? Oh my gosh. You can tell which words are new to me because it takes me a moment to say them. With those beautiful flowers that are in abundance in your garden, I know that a lot of them are very colourful. You have so many different colours. Do you have a plan on possibly separating the colours, especially if you're going to replant them in rows?
Not for those. They'll have a really big colourful mix. That I'll offer just doing rainbow bunches because they look really great. But then I would like to branch out and get some more specialty varieties. So, I've been loving the pastel pink or cream colours. Yeah. Again, I just love those.
And peachy colours. You've been drawn to some of those too, I've seen.
Definitely. Yeah, I love those. And when I have more specialty ones, they will be planted together in clumps. But I also want the flower farm to just be a lovely area for me to walk through. I don't want it to be super rigid rows of one thing here and there. I want it to be just a mix and a beautiful, colourful mix. Yeah, so I will be planting, just random colours around just to keep it interesting.
Yeah. And touching on the calendula flower, so I want to also talk about the benefits that flowers have as far as beauty, self-care, and at home. So calendula is one of those really perfect examples of a flower that's not only beautiful and beneficial to pollinators and your garden as well, but is also really beneficial, and you are really good for this for beauty products or for skincare products.
Yeah, I love using calendula for like a lip balm that I make. I use it every single day. It's also good for me, it's good for eczema. You just need to be really careful and do patch tests, obviously, when you're making your own at-home beauty products.
Yeah.
But it's really great for that. The oils, or you can infuse oil with it. So that's what I usually do with a lot of flowers. I'll either dry them or infuse coconut oil or olive oil.
Yeah.
And use those as well as drying them for like bath salts.
Yes.
Like I love a good bath.
Yeah.
And
or a bath bomb as well.
Bath bombs. Yep. Yeah, so they can add in a little bit of scent. Calendula does have a little bit of a scent, but I use it more for its medicinal properties, which is kind of anti-inflammatory and, just a really gentle flower, which I really, really like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that by mixing calendula and lavender flowers together, I was able to bypass like the smell that it has, because lavender is such a beautiful, soothing, calming kind of smell. Yeah. And we found that by putting it onto like irritated skin was really helpful. So our dog had an allergic reaction to something out in the grass over winter time, and he was ripping his fur off and causing these awful I don't know, like just his skin looked terrible, and it was
kind of
so
like eczema
itchy
for dogs, really.
Yeah, and it was so intense, and we found just by putting that calendula and lavender salve on him, not only helped to calm his anxieties, but you could see it soothe him. He didn't have that urge to rip himself apart or lick it off, and you could see just like the stress ease in his eyes until again it all went into the skin, and then he would start getting itchy again. But over time, when we were putting it into his ears, you could see it helping, which was really amazing. And there is so many flowers out there that can be used for medicinal purposes. It's something that I'm only starting to like expand my knowledge on and read up on weeds and plants that can be digested or used as tonics or on your skin,
or edible as well,
or edible too, that can have benefits for like digestion, can have benefits for like headaches, for colds, and experimenting through using them in tea as well has been so much fun, and you can learn so much about them and their beauty.
I really want to make, with the bottle brush flowers that we have, some bottle brush cordial. I think I said this before in an episode, or maybe not, maybe it was on YouTube. But yeah, you can just infuse them in water, and because there's so much nectar in them, granted, I don't know if there'll be any more with all the rain and the birds have been getting at them. But yeah, you can just kind of infuse them in water and make like a sweet tea with bottle brush flowers.
That's so incredible.
I'd like to try that.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because you made a syrup, like a syrup from nasturtium flowers.
Yeah, I have to be a little bit careful around here with nasturtiums though, because they are more weedy. Like they're a little bit of a weed around here. So we do have some down the back, that have just gone crazy, and they were here when we came. But maybe some nasturtium syrup could be good again.
Well, that's the thing. By being able to take the flowers off and use them in other ways, you're preventing that flower from having more than it needs and spreading like a weed. Yeah. Same with nasturtium flowers. You can also get the seed pods while they're green and use them, like grind them up into a paste that you can use in sushi. It's got a really nice floral taste and a bit of like that wasabi kick.
Yeah, they're kind of a bit peppery.
Yeah, which is really nice. We started using the leaves of nasturtiums as opposed to lettuce and spinach as well. So just get creative with flowers. There's so many edible flowers out there. Even being able to take like the seed pods from radishes. Yeah. You know, letting them go to that next stage. Yeah. And just being experimental with what you're eating, because not only is it beautiful in your garden, but it can be really beautiful in whatever food you're making.
Yeah. And really great for you as well, for your health. Yeah, even some little native flowers, like native, I think they're native violets.
Oh yes, they're gorgeous.
They're really pretty.
Yeah, and they're so little and dainty.
Yeah, great for cake decoration.
Yeah, and they're everywhere as well. There's so many beautiful vines as well that are natives that just grow in the forest, and unless you take that moment to just stop and look, you won't spot them. Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Well, I think we've talked about so many different flowers here, but I feel like we should touch on, just to wrap it up, a little bit about our favorite flowers or our favorite color flowers, and maybe what we're going to be planting in the next season or so.
Yeah, sounds
Spring
good.
and summer.
I think you should go first, because I need a bit more time to think of my favorite flowers. Like I said, I'm still so new to it and I'm more attracted to colors. So you go first. What are your favorite flowers?
Well, I have a lot. Like, I mean, I need to, every flower that I plant for the flower farm, like, I'm loving. I suppose one of my favorite flowers that has been with me, or just in my mind for a long time, is when I lived up in Northern Australia. It's called a pink euodia, and it has a few different names, and I'll put a photo up on the screen of what it looks like. But it's the host plant to the Ulysses butterfly. Wow. So a lot of flowers are also host plants to butterflies, which is a pollinator that we didn't really touch on. But
what does a host plant mean?
Well, it basically means it's one of the sources of food, or the main source of food or habitat for an animal or butterfly or insect. So the Ulysses butterfly, I think it also might lay its eggs on the plant as well. So that's another...
which would make sense because then as the little caterpillars hatch out, they have their food source right there.
Yeah, so you can find a lot of host plants if you want to attract butterflies to the garden. Often they'll be flower plants, but the flowers of this tree, they grow like on the trunks and on the branches rather than kind of a single stem or something like that. So it looks like the whole tree is just like a pink fluffy tree, and it just looks beautiful. So that's one of my favorites. But I also just love all of the bulbs that I've planted in the garden, like the ranunculus and the linaria, just all of the like purple flowers I'm loving at the moment.
Purple's such a great colour in the garden, isn't it? And it must be because of like that purple-green connection. I know purple and orange are opposites, but green is somewhere amongst there. It might be the cool colour effect.
I think so. I mean, green is my favourite colour, so I love purple with that. There was some more that I wanted to say, but I can't remember.
Dahlias?
Other flowers. Yeah, but I haven't really grown a lot of dahlias yet. Okay. I also love roses. I have a new love for roses. I absolutely love the plants. I think they're so pretty. Yeah. Just the plant itself, and I love the smell of roses.
And they smell amazing.
Yeah. So we'll go with those few. We've got a native, got a non-native. Yeah. We'll go with that for
if you've got more, feel free to jump in. I reckon some of my favourite flowers, or the ones that I'm planting a lot of everlasting daisies, mostly in reds, pinks and whites, like a combination of that together. And I'm planting a lot of them next to the bees. But alongside them, I'm also planting a lot of flowers that are quite tall. So like amaranth, some more of my salvia flowers as well, because I know that they're going to be a favourite of the bees. And a lot of the things that I plant are for the bees. So we've got a lot of lavender as well that I've been propagating. Native-wise, I love Banksia flowers. I think they're cool. So beautiful.
I love them.
Yeah, before we came to our property, there was a Banksia tree right smack bang in the middle of the driveway, and unfortunately, I think through the droughts or the fires, it has died. But I think replanting another Banksia tree there would be so beautiful.
Yeah, they grow really well around the South Coast.
Yeah,
so many
they
nice
do.
Ones.
They love the soil. And did you know that the flower, once it's dried, can be used as a hairbrush?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really good.
Do that. Yeah, should try that with the ones I've got.
Yeah, there you go. So those are my picks.
Cool. Well, we would love to know what your favourite flowers are or what you're planting at the moment.
If you share them on Instagram and tag us in it as well, we would love to see your flower gardens in your homes.
Love to see some photos. Yeah. Be cool.
And with that, I guess we're going to wrap things up.
Yes, it's been a good episode. Fun little episode. Yeah.
Make sure if you have enjoyed the episode, leave us a comment. Let us know what your favourite flowers are. Let us know what you're planting this year as well. Leave us a review as well. Spread out the word on our podcast. Let's grow this community together.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Yeah. And until our next one, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.